Okay, Chuck Merdler, Marty Walpoff,
Here.
Rosemary Ginty,
Here.
Dan Paternak, Sylvia Alexander,
Here.
Bob Bender,
Here.
David Gelman,
Present.
Julie Reyes, Camelia Tepelis, Omar Murray, Nick Fazio.
Here.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. There's a quorum.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two parts to tonight's meeting. And before I get to telling you about the two of them, I'd like to call to your attention three people who are on this site. I see two of them at the moment, who are very special and have agreed to give us some help on item number 3, which is of monumental importance, item number 2. They are Ted Weinstein of HPD. There is no person in the city of New York who is more familiar with housing, its ramifications, its importance, or more respected than Ted Weinstein. And I thank him for joining us. He will be helping us on a critical issue I'll talk to you about later. Then there is the absolutely superb Sharita Paulson, who is the Riverdale Natural Preservancy, and she too has agreed to help us on the second item that we will be discussing. And where the heck is Jody McCullough? Jody, are you there?
Yes, I am, Chuck. Good evening.
Good
Hi.
evening. And she is the third person who I've asked to help us because she's already doing it. And all three of these people know exactly where the second item is. So I will hold you in suspense on that for just a moment. But I want to tell you that you will, in a few moments, receive an email from Kira containing 3 documents that Ted helped us secure today, and that will be included in the discussion that will follow. And when we get to the second item, you will see why those are important. You may not understand the documents fully, and one of the purposes in sending them to you now is so that we can walk you through what they are. Marty, can you do the following? Would it be okay if we would go to the second item first and then do Stag, or do you think we should do Stag first?
I can get Stag out of the way. Those who are aware, Stag had a stop work order for several reasons. Primary, which I found surprising, that they, even though it had been asked for a rock study, they call a geothermal study, geotexthermy, which they finally did. And that was pretty much what was holding up from the Department of Buildings, was holding up construction. Now that it's resumed, they're back to rock excavation. As annoying as it is, we're hoping that it'll be done and completed within a month. So they already started, so hopefully this month. And DEP has already been down to do a measurement to determine that the sound that's coming from the excavation is not excessive. There was a question raised about standing water since there was no construction going on. Standing water, of course, is a concern with mosquitoes and what have you. Now that they're back on site, I have it from Jay that they will better attend to any standing water. The geotech report, I said that the geotech engineer comes by on a daily basis and takes a look at the rock formations and decides whether or not it's good or not good to go forward. So far, it's been okay. We have not yet seen the new plans We have a meeting scheduled coming up where we will meet again with Jay on site and be able to talk about and review what's been going on and hopefully catching everybody up. So that's my report at this moment. We'll have more to report when we see what's going on site.
I would like to give you a little piece of additional information. As many of you know, I have for many years served as a member of the New York City Housing Development Corporation by appointment of the governor going back to Mario Cuomo. That's a lot of years. In that role, and because of problems we had with Mr. Stagg on his other projects, I opposed and delayed the financing of various of his projects within HDC, explaining that if a person proves irresponsible in the eyes of a community board, that's good enough for me to oppose their getting state financing benefit. The issues were ultimately resolved. Mr. Stagg had an issue before the HDC last week, the preliminary approval of a project financing on Longwood Avenue. I pointed out first to the chairman, Adolfo Carrion, who was his former counsel or advisor, Staggs, and who was recusing himself from voting, that I would not be doing that, but told him as well as I tell you now that I would vote for the proposed request for construction money because his cooperation with the board and the community so far has been such as to make it important that we reciprocate and hold no grudges. And that was unanimously approved on that ground. I just wanted you to know in the interests of full disclosure. We now go to item number 2. And let me give you some background. I see that Kira has already started to send out the materials. There are verified reports that over the course of the next few weeks and maybe as late as middle of next month, at least 2 major relevant changes for this community and others will be emanating from the city of New York. The first is a series of housing proposals under which they would propose to create additional housing construction in a variety of forms, and I will tell you what that is. I have not seen the report. It is in the hands of the various senior representatives of the city, including the Commissioner of HPD, the Commissioner of HDC, and probably a couple of others, and is under the direct supervision of the mayor's office. The second report dovetails in significant respect with proposed changes in the zoning ordinance. Those changes can have wide-ranging effect. I mentioned to you at the last meeting that in connection with the proposals that are constantly being made to create more housing, the governor of the state of New York had proposed that we abolish all single-family housing zoning and that we provide a way in and by which such housing can in future be expanded, built upon, etc. That may have provided the impetus for what is going to come out of City Hall, because in many respects, it is supposedly designed to provide for additional housing. and I'll discuss that with you in a moment. Those two proposals fit together in various parts. One part is of particular interest to the vice chair of the board, which is the issue of affordable housing. And what you have received now, I'm going to take 2 minutes. Have you got it all? Have you folks gotten the email from Kira?
Chuck, it was sent. If people didn't get it, it should be coming through. I think some of the documents were large, so it may take a few minutes to download on their systems.
I have mine.
Okay.
I
All
have
right.
mine.
So let me tell you what this is. Ted Weinstein, thanks again for helping pull this material out. Some of it is a bit dated, but it gives you an idea of things that you are going to have to think about on one issue of what I've mentioned to you so far, namely affordable housing. The first page should be a discussion of what is area median income. Hang on just a minute. Area median income is the vehicle in and by which it is determined what the rents of affordable housing should be. And what you have shows the area median income in the city of New York according to the latest HPD charts. It is not, as far as I can determine so far, enacted pursuant to law, but is a matter of determination in one respect by HPD. The actual area median income is pursuant to a formula devised by the federal government. It means that what is the average income on a median basis for residents of the city of New York and its relevant environs. Portions of Westchester County are included in that. Now, you have heard in various zoning applications and in various other applications here for 421A and the like, that this building, the rent, when asked by us, what is your contemplated rent for the building? The answer will be, it's 130% of AMI or 160% of AMI. And as Ted, who is the ever perfect educator, points out to me, what is AMI number here is low, because what was the AMI of 80% as of 6 months or a year ago has jumped by a factor of at least 10%. What is the significance of that? You will find in the second, pardon me, in the third document, this chart. This chart tells you that if this criteria is used to determine what rent is to be charged, these are the amount of income that is considered, the number of people in the family unit, and then you go along with the chart and it tells you how much they can charge in rent. So for example, on a building which is the third tier down, if you earn between $36,031 and $60,050, you are in the third tier. I'm sorry, let me restate that. If you earn $36,000 and $30, there are 3 people in your family. You can be charged a rental by the developer of anywhere from $36,000 to $60,000 a year. Now, Very few of the buildings that have been constructed in this community board district have that kind of a low rent number. More often than not, we have seen applied an AMI that is 100 to 130. And so if you go down the chart, you will see you're talking about rents in excess of $100,000 a year. And that's before the inflation that I mentioned to you. We will walk through this as we go along. And what we have arranged, which was a good idea, as usual, from Rosemary, I have asked HDC to put together a group, together with Ted, who I imposed on earlier, to brief those members of this committee who are interested in this subject somewhere in the next few weeks so that you are ready. Why? The two packages that we will receive have a threefold purpose in terms of affordable housing. 421A was not reenacted. And so in order for developers to meet what they think they have to meet in order to do what they have to do in terms of building, they are demanding additional subsidies, assistance, or the like. And in order to do that, the city is going to have to figure out how to do it. One way that is rumored to be on the table is to provide for additional FAR. That's the zoning package I mentioned a moment ago. What is AFR in this context? FAR in this context? They will allow greater height to a building, greater density to the building. Get rid of some of the requirements concerning, for example, community facilities. I do not know, I have not seen the zoning proposal, but the objective is to stimulate developers to build more housing in general and affordable housing in particular. And given their unwillingness or inability to provide a cash subsidy, the way that is going to work is by making it a more profitable venture in terms of the number of apartments that can be rented and the like. And for those of you who live in single family homes, I would remind you of what I mentioned last month. There has been talk, not just here, but actually put into practice in the city of Jerusalem, a program under which developers have been offered the opportunity and homeowners have been offered the opportunity that where you have a 3-story building or a 4-story building, a developer will provide an elevator where there was none before and will enlarge your apartment into the rear yards or the side yards or even the front. In return for doing all of that without charge to you, the developer will be given the right to add 1 or 2 stories to the top of the building, sell those apartments, and keep the profits for himself. That has become a very active practice in Israel. It is one that is likely to be enacted, if it hasn't already been enacted, in Vienna and in a variety of places across the world. That's a fact. Now, many of you will say, as I have said from time to time, why do I care if a building is 12 stories high rather than 10 stories high? And if you think upon it for a moment, if you go to a city like Paris or London, and you go to various parts of the United States, including portions of the District of Columbia, you have 2 factors: wide streets and shorter buildings. And so there is more daylight, there is more sunlight, and it looks a lot different and better. Some years ago, That became a major issue in the city of New York when Jackie Onassis, together with a group of others, campaigned against that happening in Columbus. Somebody has, can you mute your,
Is that Planned Parenthood is trying to.
Kira,
To not diminish.
Kira. Can you mute that?
Yeah, I muted him, Chuck.
Okay. Jackie Onassis led a fight against exactly that kind of an attempt and prevailed. It arose out of the Columbus Circle building that was proposed to be erected in place of the New York Convention Center, then located in Columbus Circle. There is rumor that that will be part of what we will get. So before going in deeper into what we're going to get and where we are, I have to tell you two things, which is primarily why we had a meeting tonight. It is highly likely, if we get either or both of these packages, as I think we will in the month of July, that we will have to have a special meeting of this committee to go over them, because they follow ULIP, and we will have a finite period of time. One of the very critical components of the zoning proposal, which I know was in an earlier draft, was one limiting the application of ULIP going forward. That's not a good thing, in my view. But you and I and everyone else on this board and in every board in the city are going to have to focus on that issue. If it comes up, as I understand, it is almost certain to come up. In more context, I cannot tell you, whether it's for everything or just certain buildings. It's highly likely, as Jody picked up in a report, that it will come up in the context of any and all buildings that are near transit facilities. And we're back to MIH, which some of you may recall was the zoning proposal that came to us a few years back. So the first thing I'm trying to tell you is you need to be aware that somewhere in July or August, there's a high probability that we will have a special meeting of the committee so that we can have two sessions before we vote. Why two? First one to debate and consider, the second one to clean up any loose ends and votes, the same way we did it with the Hebrew Home. Turning now to the specifics. I've mentioned one of the issues with respect to housing being the question of density. The other issues with respect to housing will be a continuation, I think, of the governor's plan to try and end single-family home zoning. My information is primary targets there were intended to be Riverdale and Jamaica. So that is an issue that will be one hot potato. And it's something that you're going to have to live with and deal with and do as you want. But if we do get that, that's going to be a debated issue. I will tell you that I spoke to members of the assembly and said, for Pete's sake, don't you dare pass this. We need single family homes, not just in the Riverdales, but we need them in Kingsbridge and we need them in other parts of this community and city. And what you're going to do is turn New York into Newark. And you're well on your way to doing it anyhow. So that's a hot potato on the housing side. On the affordable housing side, we have a real problem. With the exception of people like Ted Weinstein who live this stuff, there are relatively few people who can tell you really what is affordable housing. And while the matrix may change, it will be a serious issue right from the beginning. Let me make my point to you. There's no such thing for the average person or for those who supposedly are intended to be benefited as affordable housing. With the possible exception of New York City Housing Authority facilities. And they are not great, as you and this board have seen time and again. Therefore, one of the things I want to throw out to you now so you consider it is whether we get ahead of this curve at some point and propose a different way of thinking about the AMI and what is affordable housing. And it's really quite easy, but it's got to be explained. At the present time, you have a chart. It measures on the basis of your income and the number of people in your family that are going to live there. And it tells you how much the landlord can charge within that range. And if the landlord is scrupulous, he will stay within the band. Not all landlords are, but theoretically, that's the point. That doesn't answer two questions. Number one, there are people who can't afford this. And shouldn't we have a band of affordable housing, call it class 1, that has a rent opportunity that is equivalent to New York City Housing Authority facilities? And query number 2, one of the best kept sets of housing in this town is Mitchell-Lama housing, which was intended for and is primarily occupied by people of higher or middle income levels. And shouldn't we have that? Shouldn't there be construction for them? So the issue that you will have to deal with is A, should we have more than one band, or should it be this kind of a formula only? And secondly, are there any ways other than this that the city of New York can provide financing or encourage builders to build short of doing this kind of thing or in addition to it? That is going to be one hot potato, and you're going to have to offer to work to understand it. We are fortunate in that we have 5 people at the moment who are putting their time in to work this thing through. Rosemary, Julie, Marty, Dan Paternak, and myself have been meeting to talk about these issues as they come up. In fact, I had drafted already a resolution on the multiple bans, and Rosemary absolutely correctly said, first, people got to understand what affordable housing is and what it is not, and be able then, on the basis of that knowledge, to go forward and decide what they want to do. I will tell you, if we act promptly and rationally, I think we can make some sense here and make a contribution. And it is for that reason in particular that I asked Ted, that I asked Jody, and of course asked Sharada if those 3 people could help us by being either on the committee or, in Ted's case, briefing, not being on the formal land use committee, but on the group that's working on this, Ted, to brief us on affordable housing. And what we're going to do in the next few days is take a look at a calendar and see what we can come up with in the next 3 to 4 weeks as an evening to do this on Zoom. Marty, can I still do it on Zoom?
Effective the 19th? No.
Even though it's a non-voting activity?
The email I received from from COG says that any meeting of board members is a meeting.
So it has to be in person.
That's my assumption, yes.
Well, I don't think we can assemble this crew before the 19th. You say the 19th of June?
Yes.
I just don't think that's realistic, but we'll take a look at it. Those are the issues I wanted to call to your attention and ask you if you have questions, concerns, or the like. But if it's going to be in person, you're going to have to traipse over. I'll find a place.
Chuck, you could do it hybrid.
That's true.
We're not yet set up for that.
You could do it hybrid. I can make it happen. I promised I would.
All right, well, let's see if we can. Otherwise, it's going to be in person. So I've asked Ted to give me some dates, and Eric Enderlin at HDC is going to give us some dates when they might be available to give us some time on one evening. And that they will walk you through what is and is not affordable housing and how it plays a role. Are there any questions, comments, bricks to be thrown, rotten eggs to be thrown? Silence reigns. Rosemary, you were right.
Chuck, maybe one thing that would be important, as I understand it, we've lost Jutan. Jutan's, but Carol usually doesn't come to our meeting. Jutan is usually the one who would come and talk us through these issues traditionally, and Carol too. But it would be good if somebody from city planning, if we had somebody we could work with at city planning through this. And I'm thinking, especially in terms of timetable, all I know and all any of us know is what we read in the newspaper. That is not anything to study for any kind of determination or recommendation or anything, a newspaper article. So from someone from city plan, just to give us a general timeline when the different pieces would come out. And as I understood from the newspaper article, that it will go through an environmental review that can be very lengthy, an environmental review. And so what timetable do they think for that? And therefore, what timetable do they think it could be certified and be before us for a real hearing and vote? I think that I think it may be spread out in time quite a bit. The zoning pieces, not the housing plan, the zoning pieces. So it would be good to have a contact person at city planning that we could kind of get timetable for the various pieces. That might be helpful.
I think we'll have help in that regard from both Adolfo Carrion, who I think will be helpful. And
May I also just add to Rosemary's point? I did speak with city planning this afternoon. We will have a representative, but that due to the change in date of our meeting, they couldn't come tonight. And Sean Breed, who's the deputy director of the Bronx City Planning, is also willing to sit down with the subcommittee to go over some of these items. And he's going to be sending me what he has, which he admitted was not too much. And once I get that, I'll send it out to the committee as well.
I will tell you that together with various of my law partners, we have a relationship with Dan Garodnick, chairman of city planning. And so we'll be able to use that to some degree to be helpful in getting information. Camelia.
Yes, thank you, Chuck. Just want to add to I guess both David and Rosemary's points. If this is to be a meeting after 19, it has to be a meeting in person of members. If it is a meeting of a subcommittee, I would like people that were not named by you, but that are members of the land use committee, such as myself, to be able to attend the meeting. And just if you can clarify again, are we challenging the federal definition of AMI? Is this what we're trying to do? And second, is this something that is imminent, you feel, as in over the summer, or how to say? So do we have an opportunity for action before the next year's session, before September? Thanks, Sean.
I think the odds are great that this issue will be placed on the table in whole or in part within the next month. So it will be over the summer, in whole or in part. The meeting I'm talking about is a meeting of the Land Use Committee of the board, together with the chair, vice chair, etc. And that is a meeting that will happen. Maybe even more than one, because we need one to educate and others to discuss and work our way through it. The additional people who will be hopefully joining us and giving us their benefit of their expertise are Ted and Sharita and Jody Kalan, because all of the other members of the committee are members of the board. Anyone else? Jody. You're muted.
Sorry. It's great that the community board is engaging on this early. We've seen in the past with many things how they seem to come up right when the committee is off for the summer. So expecting that there will be some movement, but as Rosemary said, it is a long process. And I think that having our voices and thinking this through about solutions rather than being about what can we make workable is a great approach. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. If you want to see me in person, remember fragrance-free facility.
That's why Gelman's working on hybrid.
Thank you so much. So yes, I'm happy to contribute in any way that I can. Friends of Spite and Dieval has been involved in the zoning for almost 30 years. So glad to be able to continue that and have the time to do it.
Thank you very much, Jody. Anyone else? Any last, oh, look, here we go. Mr. Gelman.
Yes, slight change of topic, but I think it's relevant. I was wondering if you could give us 45 seconds only on this issue of NYCHA going from section 8 to section 9 and its relevance. Or is it much more complicated?
It is more complicated. The quickest way I can tell you about it is a way in and by which they can tap other funds that they could not tap this way, in terms of getting hold of the monies you were.
Capital. No, that part is quite apparent, but the difference between 8 and 9. It is supposed to be a source of capital, but.
Let's hold that for the moment, because that is.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
The next person is the new reporter for the Riverdale Press, Abby.
Yes, hi. I just have a quick question. Sorry to interrupt. I was wondering if you could send the packet to me that everyone is looking at in this meeting. I emailed.
Will you get hold of our district manager, or she get hold of you?
Yeah, I did send an email, so I'm just
all right.
waiting to hear back.
Okay, I'll send it over.
Thank you.
I'll check the email. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Okay, so we've had a rather short meeting, but I do beg you to read the materials that were sent on the issue of affordable housing, because it's important. I do have two other things. I am advised by Rosemary that if you will recall, we had before us an application in Brother Patternak's fiefdom over on, touching on Olaf Avenue, a variance application. The board, as I understand it, has done two things. With respect to the design issues, correct me if I'm wrong, Rosemary. With respect to the design issues, it has been able to persuade the applicant to change the nature of the design so as to break up the length of the facade and make it look different and better, primarily by the use of different stones and articles like that. With respect to the objection I had to having a separate staircase entry into the basement, for the reason that that was going to just facilitate that being a third apartment, a backdoor multiple dwelling without compliance with the fire code, the building code, etc. They have provided that in the event that it is found that that occurs, the variance terminates. It ain't the whole hog, but it's a hell of a lot more responsive than the Board of Standards and Appeals has been to a community board in I don't know how long. Is there any other business that we have before us? Jody. Jody, you're muted again.
Sorry, it's very old business, but I did send some of the committee members some updated documents on Delafield. I didn't really get to look through it, but it looks like they're separating the houses and adding more curb cuts and moving some of the houses to build the last 19. So I just wanted to alert you that I had sent an email about that.
That's relevant on another issue as well. Kira will send that information out to the entire committee, please. One of the problems that has existed forever and 3 days is that city planning takes the position that in the event you've had a hearing and you've taken a position and thereafter they decide to change it in any manner, way, shape, or form, you don't get it again. And you're not entitled to comment. We may, out of the goodness of our hearts, look at it, but that's all. In the event city planning, in its proposal, seeks to in any way change any of the relevant zoning text concerning time, ULURP, and the like, I would strongly recommend that the committee, as part of its response, include a requirement that if after it has come to the board, and the board has taken, any board, has taken a position that the city planning is required to, within a very short time frame, come back to the board and hear the board's position. It'll put the heat on us, but it'll require that they do listen. They generally do not. Sharita.
Thank you, Chuck. As you know, I've been acting as the advisor to the neighbors group that was in dialogue with the developer for Delafield. And we're in the process of reviewing the information. And I believe that at least one of the committee members for the neighbors is in touch with city planning regarding this as well. So I will make sure they touch base with you.
Kira has been in touch with city planning and has told them we want to know what's going on.
Good.
And again, I think anyone else, any other old business, any new business?
Hey, minutes.
Who is that?
don't we have to review, to approve the minutes?
Yeah, I apologize. I am rightfully criticized for being neglectful of minutes. Has everybody received a copy of the minutes? Are there any comments or corrections? May I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
All right. Did you have a motion and Marty seconded? Any other comments? Any objection? All those in favor, aye? Contrary minded? Done. I should have asked for abstentions. Any abstentions? None. It's unanimously adopted. Anything else, folks? By the way, if anybody has a period between now and the end of July that is really taboo for them, would you please notify Kira so that we can try and stay away from that in our scheduling, all right? I regard vacations as taboo periods. So if you have a problem, please let Kira know as soon as you can. Thank you very much and good night.
Good night, everyone.
Right.
Good night.
Good night.